Here's the latest. Elon Musk criticizing the recent tariffs announced by the Biden administration on Chinese-made EVs. Musk saying he favors no tax incentives for EVs, while avoiding a question on whether Tesla would bring a cheaper model to the public. Bloomberg's Craig Trudell joining us now. So, Craig, riddle me this. On one hand, what people say in public feels a little bit different than what they might say in private. How difficult is it for not just the Elon Musks of the world, but the BMWs and the Mercedes of the world as they face off with the Chinese threat?
I think it is. It's a great question because BYD has proven extremely competitive, and it's not just me saying that. I mean, Elon Musk was saying that and has repeatedly said that, quite recently. I think, in January he was asked about, just how tough the Chinese are, and he, said that he thinks that they will have significant success outside of China, depending on what kind of tariffs or trade barriers are put up. And so, while he said yesterday that he was surprised by this, I don't know that I necessarily believe him in that. This has been well telegraphed, and he himself has referred to this idea that, if trade barriers are not established, that they will really give, the likes of BMW and Tesla a real challenge.
So, Craig, how much is this political? We know that Elon Musk has kind of weighed in on the political sphere, and how much is this purely out of business interest, given the fact that Tesla's got a significant presence selling in China, as well as BMW, as well as a lot of the German auto manufacturers?
I think that absolutely has to be coming into play here because, he referred to this idea of, no tariffs in China, which is silly. There are, tariffs. China does really kind of insist for the most part on you producing locally. He also referred to this idea that, Tesla hasn't had preferential treatment, which also is a questionable claim. They were the first foreign car company to be let into China that didn't need to set up a local joint venture with a local manufacturer. So, Tesla has, gotten some help in China. I think it also is just, the case that Tesla has significant business there exporting to other markets, and Musk would rather not see, a sort of escalation of tensions between China and the U.S. or China and Europe. And, here in Europe, he's quite reliant on the Shanghai factory, sending over Model 3s. And, he is making some Model Ys in Germany, but this is absolutely the case that his plant in China is, their export hub.
Craig, when it comes to Europe, we heard from France's finance minister earlier this morning, Bruno Le Maire, talking about the overcapacity and concerns with China and saying that there needs to be, quote, a united front when it comes to dealing with China. He's speaking alongside G7 partners. What is Europe's plan right now? Where are they in this process of dealing with China's dumping on their market?
Yeah, we're only weeks away from, getting a better sense of, what exactly the next step is that Brussels is going to take here. I think, there's a general sort of, consensus or assumption that tariffs will go up. I think, the Chinese manufacturers, saw this coming and actually have been, kind of conservative in terms of how they've priced their vehicles. There have been quite a lot of EVs coming into Europe from China. But, when you actually take a look at what, say a BYD charges for its vehicles in Europe, they're quite a bit more expensive than they are in China. And, some of that, of course, is, localization differences and perhaps slightly more robust, crash worthiness, because there is, there are higher standards for those sorts of things in Europe than there are in China. But I do think it's been the case that they were trying to avoid this sort of clash and just weren't able to, because even a sort of, initial, bit of exporting from China, without a huge amount of success was enough to really set off alarm bells. And to the extent that we have seen some success, it's been Tesla exporting from Shanghai, and it's been MG, which is owned by a state-owned company and used to be a British brand. And so a lot of Europeans kind of assume that they're buying a British car when in fact they're buying one from a state-owned Chinese company.
Tesla was also out with their 2030 report. Do you get the sense that Tesla is prioritizing autonomy over the market share and the core car business?
I think, it's clear as day at this point. Yesterday, Tesla putting its impact report out. The last couple of years, they alluded to this idea that they wanted to sell 20 million cars by 2030. In order to do that, they're going to need to offer much cheaper electric vehicles. And we've seen, one indication after another the last, couple months that Musk is less interested in that pursuit and wants to really sort of double down and focus more heavily on autonomous driving. And that's been something that even, very bullish Tesla investors have been nervous about, because we've seen real issues with companies, running into problems with trying to commercialize that technology. It has a lot of promise. It's been something that, a lot of people have been very interested in, but the, nuts and bolts of getting these onto the road and dealing with potential crashes and the costs of bringing this to market, it's proven much more difficult and may be a several year, even decades phenomenon, as opposed to something that is going to be ready for prime time soon.
I have to say, Craig, it's pretty incredible that at VivaTech he basically avoided or answered indirectly all questions about this, all questions about whether he's still committed to low-cost vehicles. But it was only a month ago in his earnings he literally talked about their growth mostly being underpinned by low-cost vehicles. What Musk are we supposed to believe in?
I do think there was more than a few contradictions in what he was saying yesterday. My assumption is that he was sort of hearing yesterday's question is really more so alluding specifically to this idea of a standalone, brand new $25,000 Tesla. A lot of people refer to it as the Model 2. And I think that car is just not, a priority for him. Again, he wants to, go the self-driving route instead. And I think, reading between the lines of what he said on the latest earnings call, it really just sounds like they're working on, taking some of the development that work that went into that $25,000 car, applying it to their existing lineup, and spinning that as we're going to offer more affordable electric vehicles as soon as late this year, but leaving out the particulars, which I think it means that we're going to see a cheaper Model 3 or Model Y late this year or early next year.